Welcome. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of zapotec warfare. A little disclaimer, a lot of people do get the zapotec mixed up with the Aztec, but the zapotec are originally from Oaxaca. They're also known as zapoteca. So the zapotec is an ancient civilization that thrived in southern Mexico, like I mentioned before, in Oaxaca. The Zapotec were fierce, strategic, and had some seriously impressive military. Zapotec had very well-trained soldiers to elaborate rituals surrounding battles. The Zapotec knew how to defend their land and honor, but it wasn't all about fighting. Did y'all know that they had a very, very unique way of celebrating victories? That included turning captives into trophies. Some of them were sacrificed in grand ceremonies, but they wouldn't necessarily always use enemies as the trophies. Sometimes they would use people who they honor, and the people who they would sacrifice would allow this. They thought of it as an honor. So stick around as we explore their military strategies, weapons, and how the Zapotecs managed to control their large territories with a combination of might and diplomacy. The Zapoteca had a very different wardrobe compared to most civilizations that we know of. They had a pretty distinct way of dressing for war, and their clothing reflected both on their culture and their social ranks. The Zapotec warriors wore clothing made from cotton and other materials that they could get from their environment. They didn't really have that type of armor that we see in Disney movies or those Vikings and stuff like that. They wanted it to be easy to move during battle. Their clothing were often decorated with vibrant colors, and sometimes they had what we know as the Aztec patterns, which were a sign of their craftsmanship and pride. They weren't just random patterns. While they didn't have full suits of armor like in some other ancient cultures, the Zapoteca warriors did have ways to protect themselves. They wore padded armor made of cotton or leather, especially around their torso. This armor helped absorb some blows from arrows or punches or spears. Some warriors also wore helmets made out of wood or leather, which sometimes had feathers, and it's known that the higher the rank you were, the more feathers that you would have yourself or your helmets. Like I said, feathers played a very huge role in the Zapoteca war. Not just for decoration, but it was also a symbol of strength and skill. Warriors who had been through many more battles than others or achieved high status often wore elaborate headdresses made from feathers, like I mentioned before. The bigger and fancier the headdress, the higher the rank you were. Obviously, there was rank differences. There was a difference in how warriors of different ranks dressed. High-ranked warriors, or the leaders, wore more elaborate decorative clothing than regular soldiers. A warrior's weapon was often an important part of their identity. Warriors carried special weapons, like this. These designs symbolized their achievements. These shields were often decorated with faces of gods or animals that were considered powerful or protective. A little fun fact, in the Zapotec culture, warriors were often seen as heroes, and their clothing was a big part of their identity. After a successful battle, a warrior might be honored with the new, fancier headdress, symbolizing their growth in status and success. So, whether it was for protection, status, or just to look fierce, some Zapotec warriors had some pretty styles, and they were tied to their role and their victorious battles. It's pretty cool. So that wraps up my informational video on the Zapotec civilization and their warfare, as well as the way that they dressed. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you grew to be as intrigued with the topic as I did.